Tonight, I go back home to Georgia to look into the death of a young wife.
That Atlanta wife murdered as she opened her very own front door. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
This is a true murder mystery. Emphasis on murder, emphasis on mystery.
I felt like Lita's murder case looks like a true crime story, but it goes a lot deeper.
Who would kill this woman? She wasn't robbed. Somebody came to the door with roses and shot her dead.
Was there a feeling that this had to be pretty calculated?
She was shot with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
No obvious suspect.
Was she at all concerned about the fact that she was in an interracial marriage and that this was a difficult time in the South?
It was not a welcoming place for a black woman to live.
She said, I'm done. I'm packing up my stuff.
I want you to see the puzzle. When I put it together and I show it to you, you'll never forget it.
Your wife's best friend has been murdered, and police are looking at you. It's a chilly, drizzly winter Atlanta morning, and 35-year-old Lita McClinton is suddenly awakened.
It's around 8:15 in the morning, and she heard the doorbell ring. And she tightens up her rope and goes downstairs to open the door.
And I think she was probably not going to open it, but she looked through the keyhole and saw that the person had a box of flowers.
There was a man standing at the door, holding a long white box of long stem roses that had a big, thick pink ribbon around it.
So she receives the flowers, thinking that this is a delivery.
She was really excited. She thought that it was a gift from one of her friends.
In a sea of red brick townhouses, Lita's white one stands out. Her best friend Poppy and 3-year-old daughter have spent the night, and they are still in bed upstairs, just waking up.
Poppy hears her say, "Good morning," to the man at the door.
The flower delivery man produces a handgun. He fires a shot.
She actually put the box of roses in front of her face. The second shot went right through the center of her head, and she fell with a large thud.
Lita's friend Poppy was upstairs with her toddler. And right away, she grabbed her daughter and hid her into a closet and said, "You gotta be quiet, quiet as a mouse." She didn't know if the gunman was gonna come for her. Lita's neighbor hears the shots, then sees the guy running like a bat out of hell, just booking it out of the complex, and he calls 911.
The first police officer is only a few blocks away, and he gets the call inside. Lita's mother called her husband when they...
And I said, "Oh my God, that's Lita."
Detectives on the scene found a bullet fragment, 2 shell casings, and the box of roses.
2 gunshots from a 9mm penetrated the box. The weapon was never found. To this day, it's never been found.
In this case, you had just a minor amount of evidence.
At the time, it was the top story on the news, and law enforcement officers felt a great deal of pressure in order to bring Lita's killer to justice.
For years, Lita's case was cold, buried underneath the weight of unanswered questions and fading memories.
I'm Deb Miller Landau, and I just wrote a book called A Devil Went Down to Georgia about the murder of Lita McClinton Sullivan. I covered this story for Atlanta Magazine back in 2004, and the more people I talked to, the more that I researched, the more I felt like I began to know Lita. So talking about the day that she died feels personal.
The case was also personal to Clint Rucker, the prosecutor. When I came to Atlanta to meet up with him, I learned that one of his passions is puzzles. Working from the outside in, which also translates to solving homicides.
Where do you begin? How do you start to connect?
When I'm putting together a puzzle, not only in real life, but also a murder case, I make an assessment about what it is I'm working with. I start to identify pieces of the puzzle that are foundational.
Lida's murder case looks like a true crime story, but it goes a lot deeper. It's a story about love and loss and greed.
Lida had been reared in Atlanta's Black Elite.
You know, on the surface, she was living an Atlanta dream.
A prosperous upbringing.
A very prosperous upbringing. The expectations for her life were pretty high.
Black women have had to be exceptional in order to be seen. And that was the case then, and I think it's still the case now.
One thing seems certain, a murder of this kind is personal.
Was there a feeling that this had to be pretty calculated?
Police knew almost immediately Lida Sullivan was the intended victim.
Who would kill this woman? She wasn't robbed. Somebody came to the door with roses and shot her dead.
Atlanta had its fair share of crime, but this was most certainly one of the highest profile cases that got reported in the news.
Sullivan was shot twice in the head, a box of roses found next to her body.
Using a flower delivery man and shooting her, it was something that just kind of stuck out to me.
Atlanta, Georgia, billed as a vibrant melting pot, a destination for creatives. But if you grew up in Georgia in the 1970s, as I did, you know this was a very different place then. One still emerging from the dark shadows of segregation and racial tensions.
What was 1970s Atlanta like when she was sort of coming along?
We've got African Americans that are kind of ascending into really prominent positions. Lida also is ascending because her parents are part of this movement.
Lida's parents, Emory and Joanne McClinton, were both power players, movers and shakers in Atlanta.
Emory McClinton was on the State Board of Transportation. Joanne McClinton was a member of the Georgia legislature.
Joanne will tell you stories about being in really interpersonal meetings with Dr. King.
She was the Maynard Jackson's campaign manager when he ran for mayor.
I think the McClintons had high expectations for who Lida would become. Lida Sullivan was a true daughter of Atlanta.
She was just a gem, very, very proper.
And she had grown up in a world of cotillions, so she really was sort of that classic upper crust black person growing up in Atlanta.
She knew where she was going.
She had a great sense of style.
And absolutely charming.
After high school, she went on to Spelman College. Her parents sort of hoped that she would enter the political arena like they were, but she was very much into fashion. She was working at a boutique at Lenox Square, and in walks this guy who had unruly curls and weird glasses and just immediately saw Lida and was taken with her.
Fresh out of college, 24-year-old Lida is smitten with James, Jim Sullivan. He's a bit older, 35, and he's also white.
He showered her with gifts. He just completely showered her with attention.
He comes in, he dazzles her. What did you learn about him?
I learned that what he saw was a fantasy in Lida. I think he looked at her as a young, very attractive, very smart African-American female.
Another big difference between them is class. Lida has been raised in Atlanta's high society and Jim on Boston's gritty South Side.
He grew up in a very middle to lower middle class environment.
He went to Holy Cross College, got a bachelor's degree in economics.
He always wanted more for himself. He always wanted to be a rich person, but it didn't seem like that was in the cards. He was an accountant. He was working hard, but he really wasn't getting ahead.
But life is about to change for Jim Sullivan when he inherits a thriving liquor distributorship from his uncle, worth millions of dollars.
Crown Beverages was worth around $3.2 million. Jim had become a wealthy man. So when the McClintons met Jim for the first time, they were like, who is this guy? He had this kind of manner that was very uncouth and brash, and they were sort of mystified about what their daughter saw in him. I mean, I think the only thing they had in common was that he was Catholic and they were Catholic as well. But everything else was complete polar opposites.
Another concern, of course, was race. Remember, this is the 70s. Even though the country is watching color barriers slipping away on the hit show The Jeffersons, with Primetime's first interracial couple.
Your parents have never gotten over the fact that I'm white.
That's because you never got over being white.
At that time, this was unusual.
Georgia's anti-miscegenation laws that forbade blacks and whites to marry had only been repealed 10 years earlier.
Still, despite their obvious differences, Jim Sullivan pops the question to Lita.
So the McClintons were like, you cannot marry this man.
They felt like Lita was really making a mistake and was kind of caught up in the exuberance of this relationship.
Despite her parents' strong objections, Lita and Jim are engaged. But on the eve of her wedding, Jim drops a bomb.
He tells Lita that he has been married before and that he has 4 children. Lita was shocked.
And then, the very same night, Jim Sullivan blindsides his bride-to-be again.
He whips out a piece of paper and he says, can you sign this? And then she looks down and sees that he's drawn up a prenuptial agreement. And she's like, what is this?
Apparently determined to protect his newfound wealth, Sullivan surprises Lita with a prenup, which says that in the event of a divorce, she would walk away with virtually nothing. She's reluctant, but the cake is ordered, the flowers are ready, so Lita signs the agreement and ties the knot anyway.
Lita got married in 1976. It was a small ceremony in Macon, Georgia. Joanne McClinton would later describe that as the worst day of her life.
The newlyweds settle some 80 miles south of Atlanta near Jim's business in Macon. It's a world away from Atlanta. But Lita agrees to give up her current job and her income and become full-time Mrs. Jim Sullivan.
They bought a house in Shirley Hills, a very affluent, very white part of Macon. Joanne and Emery McClinton feared for their daughter. Being part of an interracial couple in Macon, Georgia in the 1970s would have been extraordinarily challenging. The neighbors were like, you have the gall to bring a black wife to Shirley Hills. People threw garbage on their doorstep.
The out-and-out racism had to be tough for Lita. But she moves forward and makes some new connections and friends, including Yvette Miller.
When Lita and Yvette occasionally go out to eat, she notices something a bit curious.
We'd go out to lunch at a nice restaurant, and she couldn't pay the bill. And I would end up picking up the check.
And they were a wealthy couple.
They were very wealthy.
Then one Christmas season, a card arrives in the mail addressed to Jim. Lita opens it, and what she discovers will make her question everything. Lita and Jim Sullivan's first few months of marriage seemed to be going well.
They were both intelligent, both attractive, definitely upper class, high society.
But just beneath the surface, there's some obvious cracks.
They seemed to be loving at first.
at first.
He was not that nice to her, and he was not that kind to her.
Was he brusque? Was he brash?
He was a bit arrogant. Even though he had all of these resources, he did not, in my opinion, take care of his wife.
Friends say that the once generous millionaire has suddenly become a miser.
He was notoriously cheap.
He would wear his dead uncle's clothes around the house. He would use the sheath from the dry cleaning as saran wrap in the kitchen. He didn't want Lita to work, but he kept her on a very tight allowance where he gave her $150 a week.
Did she express any discontentment with her marriage?
When we were at those restaurants, Jim just does not give me enough money to take care of me and the house. You know, she clearly was not happy.
Was there talk of infidelity?
Lita had several instances where she questioned whether or not her husband was actually having an affair.
One day she finds a long blonde hair in their master bathroom, and she asks Jim about it, and he says, "I don't know what you're talking about." They got into this cycle of, she accused him of philandering. He would deny it, and then he would buy her sort of an expensive jewelry apology.
Then, during the holidays one year, Lita makes another stunning discovery.
A Christmas card came addressed to Jim. She opened it. A woman wrote in something like, missing your kisses. The woman's return address was on the envelope, so Lita went and spoke to her, and the woman said that she had been having an affair with Jim.
Lita is distraught and goes home to be with her parents in Atlanta. But her husband manages to lure her back, increasing her weekly allowance in a now post-nuptial agreement.
Now it's $300 instead of $150 a week, but it still shows that all of their assets belong to Jim.
That's right, the successful business, Lita's Mercedes, multiple properties, even her jewelry, still belong to her husband in the event of a divorce.
But in an attempt at reconciliation, Lita signs the postnup.
Just a few months after Lita signs that agreement, without Lita knowing, Sullivan decides to sell Crown Beverages for $5 million.
And that's not all. He tells her they're moving to Palm Beach, Florida.
Lita was in shock.
She had any clue that he was going to whistle her down to Palm Beach.
But Lita's new Florida home, located a stone's throw from what would become Mar-a-Lago, is more elaborate than she ever would have imagined. Called Casa Alita, it's a 17,000 square foot mansion with 8 oceanfront bedrooms.
It was just unbelievable.
When you went to Jim's home, you go through this tunnel and you would be at the beach. It's your own private beach.
But for Lita, everything that glitters isn't exactly gold.
James Sullivan very much wanted to integrate himself into the upper echelons of society, and his aspirations did not include Lita's participation.
It was not a welcoming place for a black woman to live. And when he found out that to sort of scale the level of social plateau he was looking at in Palm Beach, having a black wife was a serious impediment to that.
She was left out of some affairs, and she really became upset.
So even though they had money, this is a moneyed crowd, didn't really matter though.
He was barely rich compared to Palm Beach.
Did he want to be in that crowd?
Oh yes, he wanted to, be accepted as one of the rich and famous.
It doesn't take long before Jim starts to flirt with other women.
And it's at a cocktail party that one particularly elegant Palm Beach woman catches Sullivan's eye.
Jim sees Suki Rogers, who is a Korean-born socialite.
She was telegenic. She had a spicy personality. I think a man like Jim Sullivan could not help but be intrigued by this beautiful woman.
They started dating. He's still married to Lita.
By now, the Sullivans have been married nearly 10 years, but things are about to explode.
Lita finds women's lingerie in their master bed. It's the bra that broke the camel's back.
She said, I'm done. I'm packing up my stuff, and I'm going back home.
Lita arrives back in Atlanta. The very next day, she files for divorce from Jim.
But Sullivan fights Lita every step of the way, and the divorce drags on.
Did she seem concerned, worried, nervous about her breakup?
What I detected was she was excited and she was cutting the cord and leaving Jim alone. She wanted her life back.
While Lita is looking forward to a new life of freedom, she can't be happy about the prospect of leaving her marriage with virtually nothing. No career, no Palm Beach mansion, no Buckhead townhouse, and $2,500 a month in alimony for 3 years. So Lita is going to divorce court, determined to fight for what she believes she deserves.
All she wanted was a reasonable financial settlement so that she could kind of go on with her life.
January 16th, 1987 was set up to be a pivotal day in the lives of Lita and Jim Sullivan.
A judge was going to decide whether or not to throw out the post-nuptial agreement.
She might get as much as close to $1 million in cash and assets.
The morning of January 16th, Lita Sullivan, she'd lose her life that day in a murder.
With Lita out of the picture, Jim Sullivan stands to gain the property that they had and retain control over all his money.
Sullivan was the main suspect.
That is, until a treasure trove of secret recordings of Lita's private conversations are uncovered, taking this investigation in a whole new direction.
And police are looking at you.
You know, you make a big circle and you put everybody in it that's close to Lita. Everybody's a suspect. But the first one would be the husband.
The first and obvious suspect was James Sullivan, who stood to gain everything from her death, all the property, all the monies, and who was contesting the divorce.
Detectives went down to speak to him in Palm Beach, and they put him through a polygraph.
Jim Sullivan not only passes the polygraph, but there's something else. He has an alibi that puts him nearly 700 miles away from the crime scene.
James Sullivan was actually in Palm Beach at the time of Lita's murder.
When you first look at it, it looks pretty cut and dry. When you interview all the people involved, everybody points in one direction, towards the husband. But when you sit down and look at the facts, I'm not so sure that the husband is the person that committed the crime.
Nothing surfaced in the early stages of the investigation that implicated Jim Sullivan in the murder.
Sullivan is cooperating with authorities, and during his interview with detectives, he mentions the name of his friend, Marvin Marable.
At the time of Lita's death, Marvin and James Sullivan had a very close relationship.
Remember, Marvin Marable is married to Lita's best friend, Poppy, who was in the Buckhead townhouse with her 3-year-old daughter the morning that Lita was murdered. But back before the shooting, the friendship hadn't always sat well with Marvin.
When Lita moved back to Atlanta, they started, hanging out together.
So she's disillusioned by her relationship. Did her failed relationship have any impact on your relationship?
Well, from the standpoint of them, being together all the time and going out, yeah.
Commiserating.
Oh, absolutely. Certainly didn't help, and I can understand her being there for her friend, but, sometimes you can go overboard, which is what happened in our relationship.
Marable, a former New York State trooper turned entrepreneur, says Lita would often spend hours at his home with Poppy. And it was during this time, he says, coincidentally or not, that his own marriage began to unravel.
I found a letter where Poppy was planning to file for divorce.
So she was planning to file for divorce without your knowledge?
Oh, yeah.
That had to be a shocker.
It was.
So then you decided to try something a little questionable after that.
You know, I have a background in law enforcement. I don't see it as questionable. It's your own telephone in your own house. I put a recorder on the, people call it a tap, on the phone, and I started recording conversations.
In the house phone?
Mm-hmm. On the house phone.
He began listening to Poppy and Lita's conversations and ended up recording more than 300 hours.
In doing those very personal conversations between girlfriends, Marvin Marable learns that there may be some information that James Sullivan might be interested in learning that will be helpful for him in his divorce case.
He tells Sullivan about the tapes and what's on them, specifically Lita's post-divorce plans.
And soon enough, the two disgruntled husbands are conspiring to get the best of their soon-to-be ex-wives in divorce court.
Marvin Marable travels down to Palm Beach under a false name, and the two men listen to the tapes, and Marvin says, "I'm not going to record anymore," and Jim says, no, keep recording.
Was there talk of money?
Yeah, he offered $30,000.
Jim says to Marvin, if the judge decides to honor the postnuptial agreement, he's going to give Marvin $30,000 for the use of the information on the tapes.
What kinds of things did Lita talk about that could be helpful to either one of you?
You know, there were some guys that, she would talk to, but she was legally separated.
But then, just a few days after Marvin and Jim's secret meeting at Casa Elita,
Poppy and Lita somehow discovered the recording device.
How did they react?
It wasn't nice. She filed for divorce the next day.
She was angry.
She was very angry.
Lita was upset too, so upset that she reported Marvin to the authorities, and he was charged with possession of an eavesdropping device. So when police questioned Sullivan about who might have a motive to murder his wife, he tells them to look no further than Marvin Marable.
And sure enough, only a few days after Lita's death, Marvin is being questioned by the Atlanta Police Department about Lita's murder.
I go down for the interview, and the first thing they did is read me my rights. And from there on, it was just a nightmare. I was a prime suspect.
You have a law enforcement background, so you knew what police
So
were.
I knew that I was being followed. I could pick the investigators, police, could pick them out all the time. Jim had mentioned my name to them. He said, look at Marvin Marable.
This was serious stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How worried were you?
I was very worried.
Joanne and Emery McClinton were beyond devastated. Their eldest daughter was dead. Just 3 days after Lita's murder, they held a funeral.
Days dissolve into months, and authorities are no closer to finding Lita Sullivan's murderer.
The case is just sort of growing colder and colder by the minute.
And while Marvin Marable might have been angry at Lita for pressing those charges against him for eavesdropping, there was no evidence he was responsible for her death.
I know that people get wrongly accused, wrongly convicted, and so the only saving grace is the fact that I knew I was innocent.
By process of elimination is you can determine the pieces that don't fit.
And just eliminate them.
The way in which we eliminated Marvin Marable as a suspect. There was just not enough to connect him directly to the crime itself.
As for that eavesdropping device charge, Marvin was put on probation, which he completed, and then he was exonerated. But on those recordings Maribel made, Lida had talked about other men, something that her soon-to-be ex-husband Sullivan pointed out to police.
He made allegations that she was participating in extramarital affairs, and that perhaps this was the action of, you know, a disgruntled boyfriend.
We have a lot of major players. At this point in the investigation, we have a lot of suspects.
One of the first men police question is a professional athlete.
Lida and him had been friends when she was in Palm Beach. The police quickly found out that he was in prison for drug possession.
That athlete is behind bars when Lida is killed, so clearly he can't be the trigger man. Then investigators turn their sights to a prominent Atlanta businessman.
And he and Lida had been childhood friends, and they sort of rekindled their friendship. And they realized that he had no motive, and they found nothing that connected him.
Authorities also take a hard look at another suitor who had taken Lida to dinner the night before her death. And get this, had also given her 2 roses.
The suspect was a man named Bob Daniel, and Bob had had an incident a couple months before the murder where, in a drunken rage, he came to Lida's house, smashed his car into the garage, and as the cops were taking him away, he said, "I'm gonna kill that." So, serious red flag.
But that lead didn't go anywhere either.
Bob had just had quadruple bypass surgery. You know, the police ultimately decided that Bob had nothing to do with it.
It's the unknowing that makes it so difficult. And to know that there are individuals who may be walking around now planning and plotting to do the same thing to somebody else is abhorrent to me.
I remember having the impression it was like a festering wound for them.
The McClintons want to draw attention to a $25,000 reward in the case.
The cause of finding justice for Lida became their obsession, became their passion.
The reward is for the arrest and conviction of those individuals responsible for our daughter's murder.
To catch Lida's killer, the Atlanta Police Department assigns 2 veteran detectives to the case.
If Lieutenant Walker bears a resemblance to actor Billy D. Williams, Welcome Harris reminds one of Columbo, the dogged, disheveled detective of television fame.
Building a murder case was like making a mosaic. You know, you get a shiny piece of glass here, a gem there. You put it together and you hope that from it emerges the shimmering image of a killer.
This particular case deals with what I consider to be high society. It contains a little bit of everything. Intrigue, mystery.
These days, a lot of murders are solved using DNA technology, ring camera technology. But back then, it was detective work.
She was shot with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
Most important thing found at the crime scene was the roses.
They canvassed all the area flower shops and quickly found that the roses had been purchased at the Botany Bay flower shop.
They interviewed the worker in there, and he told them that this guy came in about 8 o'clock and bought these roses and paid in cash and then left. And he was in a small car.
The florist gave a description of the man buying the flowers and another man who was waiting in the car.
So detectives know they're looking for at least 2 men.
Until yet another person is described to police, that flower delivery man who had looked Lida's neighbor right in the eye.
There was a next-door neighbor of Lida's, lived over on the right side of her condo. He lived there. His name was Bob Christensen.
He actually gave a description of the flower delivery man as a Caucasian, middle-aged man.
They went down to the police station and worked with a police artist and got sketches. As the sketches were being completed, the officers were realizing Obviously that the shooter was not Jim Sullivan, and that the other individuals were all three distinct individuals. They didn't look anything like each other, so therefore we knew three people were involved.
For investigators, this has all the earmarks of only one thing: murder for hire.
All the evidence pointed to a hitman showing up at the front door, posing as a flower delivery man, and firing a gunshot into Lita's head.
With investigators now exploring the possibility that Lita was murdered by a hired gunman, another critical piece of evidence comes to light: a mysterious phone call.
And what they found was that on the same day that Lita was murdered, about an hour after the actual shooting, there was a collect phone call that was placed from a payphone right outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
Was this a call from the killer?
I don't know about you, I haven't had a collect call from a payphone, so as a cop you probably go, I wonder if that's connected.
And a tip from a woman 700 miles away may just be the big break investigators have been waiting for.
I said, anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
This was a huge puzzle of a case.
A hitman showing up at the front door, posing as a flower delivery man, firing a gunshot into Lita's head.
How did your puzzle-solving skills come into play?
You figure out what fits and what doesn't fit.
I want everyone listening to this to know that I am absolutely innocent.
The loss of a daughter.
They still don't have the murder weapon.
But they do have witnesses.
Do you know anybody can possibly take care of my problem for me? Because I need some help here.
Anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
She suggested the flowers.
She suggested the flowers.
You actually brought in a doorbell. Why?
To have that sense of what Lita Sullivan experienced right before her murder. She's about to meet her maker.
It's a deadly delivery of a dozen pink roses. 35-year-old Lita McClinton Sullivan opens her front door and is suddenly gunned down.
On the year anniversary of Lita's death, there are no named suspects. They still don't have the murder weapon. They don't have a hitman. They don't have a paper trail that ties Jim or anyone else to a hit.
But that's about to change when they get Jim Sullivan's phone records.
On the same day that Lita was murdered, about an hour or so after the actual shooting, there was a collect phone call to James Sullivan's home in Palm Beach, Florida.
It turns out to be from a rest stop in Suwanee, Georgia, maybe 30 or 40 miles from Buckhead. Using a phone call to call another state, that opens up federal jurisdiction. In this case, that's the FBI.
We believed the phone call from Suwanee Rest Stop to his home in Palm Beach, Florida, was sufficient indication that a contract hitter may have called him after doing the job.
Enter Special Agent John Kingston, who takes a particular interest in that phone call and a whole slew of other calls Jim Sullivan made and received around the time of Lita's murder.
I got a whole year's worth, 6 months before the murder to 6 months after the murder.
Kingston notices a few calls, and one of them was to Bob Christensen, Lita's neighbor. When Kingston talks to Bob, he finds out that Jim had called Bob 3 days before the murder.
Sullivan said, had he seen anything suspicious around Lita's townhouse?
And Bob finds it strange. He hasn't talked to Jim in over a year.
Bob Christensen shares something else with Agent Kingston. On the same day Jim Sullivan called him, 3 days before the fatal flower delivery, Lita heard a loud knock on her door at 5 or 6 in the morning. It was so early and so unnerving, she didn't answer it.
So that made the call that he got from Jim even more suspicious.
Kingston also finds that a call is made between Jim's house and a Howard Johnson's motel in Atlanta, just a couple of miles from Lita's house. This is really strange. One thing that he's learned about Jim is that he's not a Hojo's kind of guy. So he goes to the Howard Johnsons and asks if he can look through the records.
They gave me the shoebox with all the registration cards, and I pick out 3 that I thought, well, these are awfully interesting. So I said, do you guys have the phone records? They said, yeah, sure we do. And I'm thinking, boy, these people keep really good records, and they keep them for a long time, and I'm really glad. They bring me the phone records for January 13th. I'm flipping through them, and all of a sudden I see 305 Palm Beach, South Florida area code. And I'm pretty sure it's Jim's number. And so I check my records real quick, and I go, yep, that's his number. And then I look, and I said, oh, look, it's from 518. That's one of the 3 cards I pulled out. Well, it just so happens I have a copy of it here. And one of the things that imparts is 3 individuals checked into the room. The individual who actually registered used the name Johnny Furr, but 3 individuals is important to me because I think 3 people involved in the crime. They put their car down as a Toyota 85 with a North Carolina plate. We believe that a Toyota was the getaway car for the murder. So there's 2 coincidences already.
But remember, these motel records are from January 13th. Lita was murdered 3 days later on the 16th. Special Agent Kingston is beginning to surmise that the killers may have tried and failed to get to her once before.
What I believe it to be is the killers having come down 3 days before the actual murder was committed, knocking on her door, her not answering it, and them having to stop and regroup and figure out what plan B is going to be. So I am in love with this registration card and becomes the focal point of my life for the next several months.
Kingston's next move is to locate this so-called Johnny Furr with the North Carolina license plate.
And to my surprise, there are 150 John or Johnny Furrs in North Carolina. But to my great surprise, 115 of these 150 are in a very small circle in North Carolina, between the 3 cities of Albemarle, Concord, and Kannapolis.
They're going to knock on every door and find this Johnny Furr. Of course, they're coming from Georgia, and anytime the FBI goes and investigates in another state, they need that state's approval. And just as they're about to get to the state border, their boss calls them and says, North Carolina's denying you entry, and they'll take it from here.
And that pretty much kills my case. that kills my case.
Yeah, soon after that, Agent Kingston is transferred to another job, and that whole investigation just sort of fades away. Meantime, in Palm Beach, Jim and Suki are living the high life. So with Lita out of the picture, Jim is free to marry Suki, which he does 8 months after Lita's murder.
He's thinking that he's the cat's meow. Eating in restaurants in Palm Beach, going to parties, got another attractive woman on his arm.
Jim drives around town in a Rolls Royce and gets into a fender bender and has to go to traffic court. Jim says to the judge, well, you've misunderstood. I wasn't even driving that day. Suki was driving. So the judge says, we're going to throw it out. However, the cop who was on the scene catches wind, and he says Suki wasn't even in the car that day. It was Jim driving alone. So now Jim has perjured himself, as has Suki.
Jim ultimately got convicted of perjury, was given a year probation and a year of home confinement.
Suki Sullivan also receives a year of probation.
Suki's freaking out. When she gets charged with perjury on his behalf, she's like, I'm done with this. Suki files for divorce from Jim. And the trial that follows is the juiciest, craziest gossip in town. So when it's Suki's turn to testify, she drops a bomb.
Did he talk to you about his former wife, Lita?
Yes.
Tell me what it was he said to you about Lita.
You can hear a pin drop. It's a big moment. After 33 months of marriage, Suki files for divorce from Jim.
Not surprisingly, it's another disputed divorce. But what might have been typical testimony about alimony takes a sudden turn in court.
Tell me what it was he said to you about Lita.
He hired someone to better for her.
I'm sorry?
He hired someone to better for her.
She claimed that he confessed to her that he had Lita killed.
This became a bombshell in the investigation of the murder of Lita Sullivan.
Suki Sullivan's divorce testimony may be big news for the FBI, but it has zero impact on the divorce judgment, which favors her husband, Jim Sullivan, in nearly every way.
His divorce was complete, but his life for turmoil was just beginning.
The opulent ocean-facing Palm Beach Palace may look like something out of The Great Gatsby, but while we watched, a new chapter in a crime story was unfolding.
We develop information here at WSB. There's going to be a raid on Jim Sullivan's Palm Beach mansion, and that is the biggest break in the Lita Sullivan case since the murder itself.
Investigators from the FBI, Atlanta Police, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation were on the grounds of a mansion identified as that of James Sullivan.
All of a sudden, Jim Sullivan is clearly in the crosshairs of federal authorities.
They got a tip that Jim, now a convicted felon, has guns in the house. Of course, you're not allowed to have guns if you're a convicted felon. So they put together a sweeping affidavit to get a search warrant.
We did see a number of guns loaded into a car and this box carried out.
When they found the guns, he was in violation of his probation, and so he went to jail for 9 months.
All this time, a federal grand jury has been convening in Atlanta.
They've got what they found in the mansion. They got what they found in the phone records. They've got Suki Sullivan. They've got the neighbors. What they don't have are the identities of the hit team. There's a problem, though.
We, the federal government, have a 5-year statute of limitations, which is going to be up on January 16th of '92.
With 5 or 6 days to go before it expired, the U.S. attorney made a bold decision. We're going to take our best shot with what we got right now, so they indict Jim Sullivan.
Jim Sullivan is indicted on multiple counts of arranging Lita's murder for hire through interstate phone calls.
Millionaire James V. Sullivan is on trial in connection with an alleged murder for hire plot. Here he arrives for the first day of trial testimony.
It was a trial that transfixed Atlanta. I mean, it was something we were covering on basically a daily basis, but we couldn't have it on camera because it's federal court.
It looks like the family is finally going to have some accountability for the murder of their daughter, Lita.
The prosecution suggests the killers were calling Sullivan from the rest stop to say the job was done. The defense suggests otherwise.
Jim Sullivan is lawyered up with the best criminal defense lawyers that you can find anywhere in Atlanta and maybe in the whole country.
There is no evidence at this point in this case who placed that call or whether that call was placed by anyone connected with the crime.
The prosecutor spent 2 weeks telling their side of the story.
Suki, the woman he married months after Lita's death, delivered some of the most dramatic testimony the jury has heard.
They build what they feel like is a really strong case.
And then a big bombshell hits.
The judge says, I'm forced to dismiss this case for lack of evidence.
Judge Marvin Shub ruled that, in effect, even if Sullivan may have been involved in the murder for hire, the government fell short in proving the phone calls related to the murder.
This is one of the most difficult decisions I had to make because I firmly believe in the jury system.
And then he looks at Jim and he says, you've been acquitted.
Is over.
The family at that point, I guess, is just sort of at a loss. How devastating was that for them?
They felt like the justice system had let them down.
I was not expecting this. It's extremely difficult.
The system today is weighed in the favor of the defense.
James Sullivan seems to have gotten away with murder.
But Lita's parents aren't giving up.
They file a wrongful death suit in Palm Beach, Florida, and they win.
We, the jury, return the following verdict.
The jury deems that Jim is guilty of wrongful death.
Total damages of the estate of Lita McClinton Sullivan, $4 million.
But Sullivan is able to hide his assets and not pay any of the civil judgment.
Jim Sullivan appealed their civil judgment, and he won by having the Florida court say that they had filed it after the Florida statute of limitations.
Once again, Jim has wiggled out of any responsibility, and the family is left dumbfounded.
Until
a call is received out of the blue.
A young woman comes forward. It proved to be the break in the case that everyone was looking for.
"11 years have gone by since Lita Sullivan was gunned down on her doorstep when a tip comes in from a town 700 miles away.
A call is received out of the blue, and the individual calling is an attorney in Beaumont, Texas. He has a receptionist whose name is Belinda Trahan, who has told him a very unusual story about her boyfriend, Tony Harwood.
Belinda and Tony lived together in Albemarle, North Carolina. And he was a long-distance truck driver for North American Van Lines.
He basically drove a moving truck.
Belinda tells her boss about a time that Tony came home from a long-haul trucking trip and said that a rich white man in Florida offered to pay him to, quote, take care of his black wife in Georgia. At the time, Belinda didn't believe it. She thought he must be cheating on her.
Belinda thought that it was Tony just trying to get out of town and go down to Atlanta to the strip bars.
Until he took her to meet this rich white guy in a diner somewhere, and he got a wad full of money.
She says he sits down briefly in their booth and gives Tony Harwood the balance owed for the hit on the man's wife.
Belinda Trahan tells her boss that soon after this bizarre trip, she broke up with Tony Harwood and moved to Texas. But now, 11 years later, she says that he mysteriously reached out to her again, asking her to meet him at a nearby truck stop.
She's afraid that he may commit harm to her.
And it's this new tip from Belinda Trahan that sends Georgia authorities to the Lone Star State, turning up the heat on an otherwise cold case.
Georgia Bureau of Investigator Agent John Lang takes a detective from the Atlanta Police Department and goes down to Texas to talk to Belinda.
She was with Tony when they met this mysterious man at this diner that they were meeting at. We wanted to show her a lineup of pictures in hopes that she could pick Sullivan out of it.
And she takes her pink fingernail and taps right on Jim Sullivan's face and says, "This is the man."
My plan of attack was to get some recordings with her and Tony. So we got her to get in touch with Tony again.
She's talking to him and trying to coax information out of him, knowing John Lang is listening on her end. And Tony gives enough information that places him at the scene at the time.
We had the phone calls with Tony. She picked Jim Sullivan out of the lineup, but there was still more investigation to do. We really didn't know who Tony Harwood was.
John Lang knows that Tony worked at North American Van Lines. So he calls up North American Van Lines and he says, hey, you don't happen to have your records from 11 years ago? And the guy says, yeah, there's some boxes full of files up in a musty attic. You're more than welcome to go poke around.
We went up into a hot attic and opened the first box that I went through. And about the third document I looked at was Jim Sullivan. His address was on it, Palm Beach, Florida. His signature was on it, and Tony Harwood's signature was on it.
He finds a bill of lading showing that Tony Harwood moved furniture for Jim Sullivan 2 months before the murder. And it's the paper trail he needs. It's like the jackpot.
Astounding. I don't know any other way to explain it. I mean, open this box and like the third record I look at, here it is. I mean, it just like it was meant to be.
On a Sunday morning in April of 1998, John Lang and local authorities go knock on Tony's door in Albemarle, North Carolina. Tony answers the door.
And he said, you know, I've been waiting on you boys for a long time.
They take Tony to the Albemarle police station. Lang interviews Tony for 3 hours in this tiny room. But at the end of the day, Tony admits to taking money from Jim, $25,000, to take care of Lita. He also tells the detectives that he wasn't the one to pull the trigger, but that he was there the day of the murder.
He went through the whole case, and throughout the interview, he incriminated himself even more. I mean, admitted that he was there. He knew what happened. So he was arrested for murder of Lita Sullivan, and we took him back to Atlanta that day.
After Tony's arrest, things moved pretty quickly.
We are here today to announce the issuance of a warrant for the arrest of James V. Sullivan.
They got enough to get Sullivan, and now boom. Sullivan hears of this and blows. He takes off.
We have reason to believe that he's outside the country.
He's just gone, vanished.
Investigators say he could be anywhere.
He is nowhere to be found.
We certainly do not know where Mr. Sullivan is. We have reason to believe that he's outside the country.
More than a decade after his wife Lita was murdered, Jim Sullivan seems to be playing a game of catch me if you can with authorities.
There is an international manhunt for James Sullivan.
Well, Jim had moved to Costa Rica, actually bought a home there. In 1998, after an arrest warrant was issued for him, he immediately, like that night, went to Panama.
If you have any information concerning James Sullivan, you should contact the nearest U.S. Embassy or consulate.
We didn't know exactly where he had flown from Panama, and we didn't know exactly where he had gone.
His trail goes cold.
They put him on Interpol, and it was just cold.
They've tapped phone lines, anybody that he might have called, and he's called no one, not even his mother.
There was a few tips that came in. The tips are just dead ends.
The McClintons, they're dumbfounded that this guy could, get away again.
But in late 1999, with Sullivan still completely off the grid, the heartbroken Emery and Joanne McClinton do get some good news.
Last week came this, a court decision reinstating a $4 million judgment against Jim Sullivan in connection with a wrongful death case brought in effect by Lita's estate.
Lita's family and law enforcement officials hope that a renewed hunt for Sullivan's money will help smoke him out.
Where you find Sullivan's money, you're going to find him close by.
But even this goes nowhere.
Fast forward to 2002. There is no sign of Jim Sullivan.
We tried every effort in our arsenal to try and locate him, to put him on the FBI's wanted list, but to also put him on the top 10 list, which is very unusual. You don't get on the top 10 list very easily. Then we also featured him on America's Most Wanted.
The most recent picture we have of Sullivan is at least 5 years old, so the FBI age-enhanced this photo, which may bear a closer resemblance to Sullivan's appearance today. If you recognize James Sullivan from either of these photographs, call us now at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
A man sees America's Most Wanted on television and goes, I know that guy. He lives in my condo complex in Chiam, Thailand. And sure enough, he calls the authorities.
He went to Panama, to Venezuela, and eventually to Thailand, where he got a beachfront condo.
He spends his days walking on the beach, sitting by the pool, occasionally playing tennis, as though no other troubles in the world. The Thai police knock on Jim Sullivan's door on July 2nd, 2002, and say, you're under arrest. The McClintons can hardly believe.
Who's behind us?
Almost as soon as Jim Sullivan is arrested for murder, Tony Harwood, who has continued to deny being the trigger man, agrees to a plea deal.
Tony kind of sees the writing on the wall.
Harwood just decided that he would plead guilty, the negotiated plea for manslaughter, and that, in turn, that he would testify against Jim Sullivan.
It took 2 years, but he finally was extradited back to Atlanta in 2004.
He got off the plane. He was wearing a single shoe because he had such terrible gout in his foot. But he gets off and gets taken to Fulton County Jail. And there's this sort of cumulative sigh of relief.
To be clear, Sullivan being tried for murder in Georgia is not double jeopardy. For one thing, it is a state case, and the previous one was a federal case, and that specifically was for arranging Lita's murder for hire over the phone.
The elected district attorney appoints me, along with a couple of other lawyers, to prosecute the case.
This was a huge puzzle of a case.
Right.
How did your puzzle-solving skills come into play?
There's no cutting corners, and you spread the pieces out, and then you figure out what fits and what doesn't fit. And that's kind of what the prosecution of James Sullivan was like. It was putting together all these different pieces so that we could make sure that the prosecution of the case was done accurately and with integrity.
What concerned you going into this trial?
He was rich. He was a white male. He had escaped the federal authorities before, and he had two of the best criminal defense attorneys representing him.
They are sharp, and if they can find a way out, they're going to find a way out.
There will not be one shred of physical evidence that links Jim Sullivan to this crime.
Jim has eluded justice so many times that there's a real palpable fear that he's going to get away with it, that he's going to elude justice again.
After nearly 20 years, Jim Sullivan is finally on trial here in Fulton County for the murder of his wife, Lita. For her heartbroken parents, this day couldn't come soon enough.
The pain, believe it or not, it increases. It does not decrease. The shock decreases. The depression decreases. But the pain continues.
It was an A-team of prosecutors, great courtroom performers.
Clint Rucker was the lead prosecutor, and Anna Green, Kelly Hill, Sheila Ross.
And the evidence will show that the person who sent that hitman to Lita's door is the only person in the world who could have profited from her death It is the only person in the world who met Tony Harwood and paid him off for killing her, and is the only person in the world who fled halfway around the world to avoid facing you.
Jury was 9 women and 3 men.
The jury is also racially mixed.
Jim Sullivan had Ed Garland and Don Samuel, again, the people who won that big courtroom victory against the feds.
What the state relies on is 2 types of evidence. Circumstantial evidence, and then the testimony of con men.
The state initially started out the nature of the crime and what happened that morning.
I heard 2 sounds. They sounded to me like steel hitting steel.
I just didn't want to believe that it was a gun. And so I hesitated for a second, and then I really knew that it was a gun.
She was able to squeeze my hand each time I spoke with her, like she understood what I was saying. And for many, many years after this, I thought that's all it was. And then one day I realized that she was comforting me more than I was comforting her. That was the sort of lady I felt she was.
They had the phone calls that the FBI had found.
There was a call from this room to Mr. Sullivan's home at 7:44 in the morning.
But all this testimony notwithstanding, it's Belinda Trahan and Tony Harwood who everybody wants to hear from.
Belinda Trahan was the most important witness in the case.
He told me that some white guy who wanted to take out his black wife. I didn't believe it.
Why not?
I've been with him for 3 years, over 3 years. I mean, I figured he met someone because we were on the outs.
Most chilling about Belinda's testimony is that she confirms that there was at least one failed attempt on Lita's life.
She testifies that when Tony had gone to Lita's house on January 13th, that she didn't come to the door. They drove back to North Carolina and told Belinda that, you know, it didn't work.
But Belinda testifies that hearing that from her boyfriend left her incredulous.
I said, just don't even lie to me. I said, because anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
Did you in any way mean for that to be a suggestion as to how to get the job accomplished?
No, not at all.
Here's Belinda Trahan, and she is falling on the sword about what she did.
She suggested the flowers.
She suggested the flowers, and she admitted that on the stand.
You brought in the diner booth where they sat. Wow. Why couldn't you just tell the jury and show pictures?
I want you to see the puzzle once it's all put together. Yeah, I can show you the box. I can show you a photograph of it. But when I put it together and I show it to you, you'll never forget it.
Pushed the paper across the table like this, and then Tony put his hand on it and took it from there.
And there was a particular moment when she is asked to stand up in court and identify the person she witnessed give Tony Harwood an envelope full of money.
Please, point him out.
It's right there. He can't even make eye contact.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, James Sullivan.
But if prosecutors feel like Belinda Trahan's testimony is helping their case, they have to know that it's just as big a risk to put Tony Harwood on the stand.
Can you show the jurors the body language Mr. Sullivan used and the tone of voice, if it's possible, that he used when he was explaining to you that his wife, Lita, was a problem?
You know, I've got this wife of mine up in Atlanta, and she is just trying to take everything I've got. And I don't know what to do about it. I need someone to take care of my problem. Do you know anybody that can possibly take care of my problem for me? Because I need some help here.
We could prove Tony Harwood and James Sullivan actually met each other. So I spent the first part of Tony Harwood's examination confirming his signature on the hotel receipt.
And I put signature, Johnny Fur.
The fact that he actually went to the flower shop.
Who actually went inside the flower shop to purchase the flowers?
I did.
They had Tony Harwood saying that he was the one who made the collect call to Jim Sullivan's house.
What did you say to him?
I said, Merry Christmas. And he said, I understand. And that was it.
What were you trying to convey to Mr. Sullivan by giving him that signal, those code words?
That his problem was taken care of.
The defense had their chance to cross-examine Harwood. Not a single question. The two key witnesses were, of course, Belinda Trahan and Tony Harwood. And so, in closing arguments, the defense assailed their credibility.
You should reject everything that came out of his mouth. Harwood says an envelope in the bathroom. She says an envelope at this booth over here.
Garland presents to the jury a letter-sized envelope stuffed with bills. Harwood had said it was all cash in $20 bills.
See, oops, some of it fell out, and some more. It won't fit in an envelope. The whole story just doesn't make sense.
In your closing arguments, you actually brought in a doorbell. Why? What was the point?
I wanted the jurors to have that sense of what Lita Sullivan experienced right before her murder.
An ordinary moment.
In an ordinary moment. The second reason why I did it is because James Sullivan liked to read books. And one of his favorite authors wrote a book called For Whom the Bell Tolls.
I'm going to ask you through your verdict of guilty to each and every count to tell James Vincent Sullivan for whom the bell tolls. Tell him that it tolls for thee. For you. For you.
And then I rang the doorbell 3 times.
As the jury goes out to deliberate, I think there's a real fear. Are they going to do it this time, or is it going to be like every other time?
I do not see this as a slam dunk for the state.
There's this anxiety. You're worried, but you're hopeful. I don't care who you talk to that does this kind of work as a litigator. They will tell you, oh, I can look at the jurors and I probably can tell you what they're going to do. No, you don't. You don't.
This is breaking news.
We do have breaking news at this hour. The jury having reached a verdict in the trial of Jim Sullivan.
The jury came back within a few hours on the same day.
It was so silent, and the tension was just palpable.
There's this anxiety. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to turn out. And you're worried, but you're hopeful.
It's hard not to think of Lita's family, her parents especially, after so many fits and starts to win justice for their firstborn child. It comes down to this moment.
The judge says,
"Ma'am, would you publish the verdict?"
And then from that moment until they get finished, nobody is breathing.
Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, James Vincent Sullivan, guilty of malice murder.
I got a chance to hug Emory McClinton. I had never been hugged so tight before. This was his baby. And we had finally, after 19 years, brought that man a sense of satisfaction. I'll never forget it. The conviction of James Sullivan was the biggest puzzle that I had solved in my career And it is one that gave me the most satisfaction that I had ever experienced as a prosecutor.
The court hears victim impact statements. What a loss it was to have Lita gone from their lives.
I dream of Lita often. She is smiling and walking in my direction, and I in hers. But we never reach each other.
The jury came back and gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I am so very pleased, and I'm happy. What we were waiting for was something in our judicial system, something to happen and to bring it all together, and that's what you see today.
Why did it take 20 years, do you think?
It goes back to the resources.
He had privilege?
White privilege, completely. He knew how to manipulate people, and he had the resources to do that.
You've got a black victim, you've got a white defendant. Did race hover in this courtroom over this case at all?
I think in our criminal justice system, unfortunately, race always permeates throughout a case. But I'm thankful to say the evidence in the case overcame that racial component.
They never received any money. Is there money? Where is this money?
He's been able to secret his money. For the McClintons, seeing him rot in a prison in South Georgia brings them a whole lot more satisfaction.
This is a woman who you never met, I've never met, most of the people involved in this case never met her, and yet her life really made an impact. When somebody dies in this kind of manner, they don't stop being a member of the family, they don't stop being a member of the community, they never stop mattering.
David, Tony Harwood was released from prison in 2018 after serving his 20-year sentence. Jim Sullivan remains behind bars with no possibility of parole.
As for the other two men who were seen at that flower shop, no one else was ever charged. That is our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
An all-new 2020 starts right now.
He just kept stabbing and stabbing. I remember trying to defend myself like this with my hands, and that's where I got the cuts on my hands.
Jason was confronted by the assailant. Someone came into their apartment, had assaulted him and his roommate.
Because she was stabbed so many times, you think, this is personal. This is someone who wanted her dead.
When you go into her apartment, what is the scene like?
You could tell that there was a struggle in there. She fought hard.
Jonna went door to door trying to get assistance.
At one point, I was praying. It wasn't her.
They had made a mistake. Now, revisiting the scene of a nightmare.
He pushed me back this way, and I fell on the bed like this. I took off, and I ran as fast as I could this way.
Did it trouble you that he ran away from the scene to get help instead of trying somehow to help her?
Scared, he wants to get away.
So he ran from here over this way to the convenience store.
I didn't have anything to do with this. I had something to hide. Why would I take this test?
I believe that's next to Warren House, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm Officer Dinah Kidd. I work for the Knox County Sheriff's Department. It was around 4:15 a.m. on the night of December 6th. It was real windy that night. We didn't have a lot of calls coming in. We felt like we were wrapping up our night because it was only a couple more hours till we'd get off.
8781.
And then we get the dispatch call that says there's a young man that had ran to the Weigels.
1080 with the victim just occurred at Weigels, 328 North Cedar Bluff. Time, stand by for update.
It's early morning in December when the clerk inside this convenience store gets a startling visitor. A young man who's bloody, pleading for help. He's barefoot and appears to have been seriously injured.
Knox County 911.
Yes, Mr. Weigels, remember at Cedar Bluff Road?
Mm-hmm.
There's a man that just walked in the store. He was heavily bloodied. Looks like he's been in a fight.
A gentleman had called in from the Weigels on Cedar Bluff and stated that he had been attacked.
When he ran up to the Weigels, he had blood all over his clothing as he entered into the gas station. He had a stab wound to his face. He had cuts on his hands. He was stabbed in the chest. So he did have obvious signs of trauma on his body.
Does he need an ambulance?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Okay, can I talk to him, please?
Sure, he wants to talk.
All right, what's your name?
Jason Amami.
Jason?
A-M-A-M-I.
Now what happened?
I just felt somebody stab me right in my chest.
Somebody stabbed you?
Me in my face. And that's the first thing I did was get up and run.
He'd heard some noise. He came outside. He came out into the hallway, and he had seen someone in the hallway, which then came to him and attacked him. He eventually got away from the attacker, and Jason had ran out the door.
He had on clothing that he was sleeping in, which was just a pair of shorts.
He had left so abruptly that he didn't even take time to get his glasses or his shoes before leaving the apartment. He just ran out as quickly as possible to flee and get help.
And while Jason Amami tells the clerk that he was able to get away, shockingly, he says he wasn't alone in that apartment.
His roommate's still in there. Apparently somebody broke into his house.
Is his roommate okay?
He doesn't know. Is he okay? She was screaming very loud.
Now, where's your address at?
Redora Road.
Redora?
R-H-O-D-O-R-A.
R-H-O?
Park Apartment.
When the call came out, we then went to the apartment complex to check on the girl and kind of see what we could find there.
21-year-old Jonna Berry is barely clinging to life.
They found Jonna laying just inside an entranceway. She was face down and had multiple wounds to her body.
You were one of the first responders here.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you remember about Jonna Berry? What kind of shape was she in?
She was not in good shape. As soon as you opened the door, she was laying in the corridor at the bottom of the steps. Her apartment was at the top of the steps, and she was covered in blood. That it was her hair. She's got beautiful blonde hair, and it stuck with me because at the time I thought she might have red hair because there was so much blood.
Just kind of moaning, making a few sounds, but was unable to talk due to her injuries.
She did have a very large wound on her neck. She also had multiple stab wounds across her body.
Over 25 wounds to her body.
It was very obvious that Jonna had been in a fight for her life and that it was a very violent struggle.
For me, it was one of the worst crime scenes that I have been involved in since being in law enforcement.
When you go into her apartment, what is the scene like?
When we go up the steps and go into the apartment looking for the suspect or anybody else that's injured, the knife was in the floor, and it had blood on it, hair on it, and it was bent.
There were 6 units in the apartment building. There was blood on each of the doors within the 6 units. And we could tell from that Jonna was the person who went door to door trying to get assistance.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not the middle of the night, per se.
One individual thought some
ground below that peephole, absolutely heartbreaking.
Unfortunately, the call dropped and there was no other activity.
Everything we have for Brandon Park Apartment.
Once the residence was cleared and we noticed there's no one else injured in the apartment, we go back down the stairs. I go back to her. So I leaned down and was talking to her, asking her if she knew who done this, if she knew where they went. I was just asking her all kinds of questions, try to help us find out who done this and what had happened. She would move around a little bit, but she couldn't answer me. So by this time, I just kind of held her hand and waited on EMS to arrive.
That night, two young people come face to face with an intruder. Jason manages to escape, but Jonna, who was too injured to speak, did not.
We were wondering what led to this horrific tragedy.
The attacker has vanished, the motive unknown.
Are our children safe? Are we safe? We had no idea who did this.
Police launch a full-scale manhunt across the Knoxville community. Inside that foyer, Jonna Berry is still alive, brutally wounded, and struggling to hold on.
I just held her hand and waited on EMS to arrive.
I remember distinctly that it was raining when I got to the scene.
Jonna dies in the ambulance, her fight ending before she ever reaches the hospital. What do you think that may have meant to her or to you to even just be there to comfort her?
I hope it helped her, and to me it would mean a lot if that was my child there.
It was 4 a.m. in the morning on December the 6th. We got a phone call from Knoxville UT Hospital. The gentleman on the other end of the phone, he asked to speak to Mike, which was very unusual because nobody called my cell phone and asked to speak with my husband.
She handed me the phone, and there was somebody on there said, "Are you Michael Berry?" And I said, "Yes." "Do you have a daughter, Jonna?" And I said, "Yes." Just to let you know, your daughter was murdered.
I heard him say, "Jonna's been murdered." And at one point, I was praying. It wasn't her.
They had made a mistake.
Yeah. My youngest son lived here, so I called him and I said, hysterically, "It's Jonna. Something's happened. You need to get to UT."
This had to be a nightmare for everybody.
It was. It rained all the way. It was like the angels was just crying.
It's just something that you never forget.
After nearly 4 hours on the road, Jonna's parents finally make it to the hospital.
When we got there, my youngest son was in the parking lot. He said, "It's true, Mama, it's Jonna."
Did you have any idea what happened at that moment?
No. And the boys identified her body, which was very upsetting to me.
She was in bad shape.
Yes. I wish that I could spare them the heartache and the memory that they'll have forever.
Jonna, smile to the camera, girl. Hey! Jonna.
Jonna grew up in a tight-knit family in Bristol, Tennessee. Take me back. Tell me what kind of a little child she was.
Jonna was a very happy child. She was very ambitious. She did dance and cheerleading.
2 older brothers.
She had 2 older brothers. They were very protective of her.
You had a beauty salon, and I imagine she was running around.
Yes, she would get a manicure. I polished her little nails. She always wanted makeup on and her hair done. She was my best friend.
She was your best friend?
She was.
After high school, Jonna heads off to East Tennessee State University, where she gets a degree in child psychology. What was it that she aspired to? What were her aspirations?
She wanted to devote her life to children. She wanted to help them in any way she could.
As Jonna grows older, her dreams for her future grow bigger, and she meets her fiancé, Jason White.
Jonna got engaged when she was 20.
Kind of young.
It was young, but she knew what she wanted, and she worked hard to get it.
Jonna loves children, and that passion leads her to Knoxville, where she begins working toward a master's degree in child psychology.
Most here consider this a safe slice of America, next to the Tennessee River. About 35 miles away, you'll find Dollywood, nestled in the Great Smoky Mountains.
She's going to school, she's moving, about to get a new degree. That's a lot.
But she was so ambitious. She was constantly on the move.
How does she go about finding a place to live?
She was in the process of looking for an apartment, but we hadn't found the exact thing, so she stayed with a friend from college. She rented a bedroom.
That friend was Jonna's roommate, Jason Amami.
I'd known Jason for a couple years prior, when she was in college.
He was somebody you were familiar with?
Yeah, we knew him, and he was a good friend. It was just a temporary thing.
Were you at all questioning or concerned about Jason Amami?
Jason was stabbed also, but Jonna's brothers and her dad wondered why Jason didn't help her.
And police have their own questions. They sit down for the first of several interviews with Amami.
He was able to explain to us that he woke up in the middle of the night because he heard a scream. Jason knew that Jonna did have nightmares, so at first he assumed that she could have just been having a nightmare. But as he got up, he noticed that there was a male figure backing out of Jonna's bedroom.
Jason was confronted by the assailant. He was stabbed about 6 to 8 times.
At that point, Jason didn't hear any more screams for Jonna. He wasn't sure if she had escaped the apartment or not. He just ran out as quickly as possible.
You have an initial reaction to any attack, and that's going to be fight, flight, freeze.
To unravel the mystery of Jonna Berry's murder, police zero in on a critical piece of evidence found at the scene.
When officers go inside the apartment, they see so much blood, it's everywhere. Then they see a bloody shoe print.
A single shoe print soaked in blood. Could this be the clue that unmasks the killer?
Jonna was funny, charismatic, intelligent. She just had this aura about her that just drew people in. Who would want to hurt somebody that was so pure?
Christmas was Jonna's favorite time of year, her family says. And just hours before the murder, she and her mom were on the phone talking about picking up gifts for the holidays.
I said, I did some Christmas shopping today, and she said, oh, I did too. We talked a little more, and we said goodnight, and I love you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
The night she died, she had been wrapping Christmas gifts for children.
Jonna had them separated, you know, in little piles, they said, with the kids' names on them.
It just seemed so tragic right before Christmas.
Fear gripped the city of Knoxville. A young woman savagely stabbed in her own home, and her killer on the loose.
21-year-old Jonna Berry and her roommate were stabbed in their Brendan Park apartment.
It really left the community feeling unsettled.
I'm a news anchor here at WATE in Knoxville, and I have covered the Jonna Berry case since the very beginning. This seemed to be a crime out of nowhere. There were so many questions, and people were wondering what on earth is going on.
To this day, Jonna's mom, Joan, can't shake the image. Her daughter bleeding, terrified, pounding on doors, and nobody answering. When you heard that she frantically ran asking for help and nobody answered their doors, what did you make of that?
It angered me at first. You know, I can understand someone not opening the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, I can understand that. People don't want to get involved. Why couldn't you be more like Jonna and want to help people? She would have helped anybody.
Some of the folks in the apartment complex possibly could not have heard the knock on the door due to it being in the middle of the night and the bedroom being located so far away from the front door. Some people, we learned, were not at home.
Detectives begin a full-scale investigation, and there's one thing that is impossible to ignore: the sheer amount of blood in Jana's apartment. How bloody was this crime scene?
There was blood in not only in Jana's bedroom, Jason's bedroom, blood in the living room, blood on the back door, blood out the back of the apartment going down the stairs.
Blood is on the doorknob, blood is on the floor, blood is on the door.
Looked like there had been some type of fight in Jana's bedroom.
This had been a struggle.
Yes, you could tell that there was a struggle in there. You could tell that she fought hard.
Numerous samples of blood were taken from the crime scene. The blood sample were sent to the TBI for analysis. This is the exit that the perpetrator took the night of the crime. We can see that this door is ajar. There's no evidence of a forcible break-in.
Detectives wanted to find out was how the person got into the apartment without no forced entry being there. Was the door left unlocked? Did they have a key? Were they let in?
There was some speculation that Jana had been on the phone with her fiancé, and perhaps in the excitement of wrapping the gifts and just having these other distractions that she forgot to lock the door.
Could it have been a friend of theirs that was in the apartment? Was it somebody that had gotten upset with Jason or Jana? So there's a lot of different theories that were being thought about of what could have happened.
Investigators also discover curious items in the apartment, like a hat and a CD case they believe belonged to the killer.
The Atlanta Braves hat, the CD case, all of those things were leading us to believe that someone else possibly had entered the apartment since these things did not belong to either one of the occupants of the apartment.
The murder weapon was discovered in the hallway directly outside of Jana's bedroom.
The knife was in the floor, and it had blood on it, hair on it, and it was bent.
The hair that was found on the knife appeared to be from Jana.
We knew right away that the knife came from inside the home. It was part of a matching set that was from the kitchen. What stood out to me the most about the weapon is how damaged it was. The handle was broken, the blade was bent. I could only assume that it had hit bone, that it was used multiple times, that it was very violent just given the force to break the handle.
While the murder weapon reveals a violent struggle, there's a single piece of evidence left on the blade which might point to the hand that held it.
There was a partial fingerprint that was found on the knife. There was an unknown DNA that was found on the knife.
Now that's got to be important, because now that's going to be something that's going to lead you to somebody.
Oh yes, very, very important. If we can match a fingerprint or a partial fingerprint to someone, that would help. Our guys photographed it, sent that off to the lab to see if they would be able to get the fingerprint off of there and see if it was in any kind of system or database that they had.
But police aren't finished yet. In Jason's room, they discover a piece of cardboard, and on it, a damning piece of evidence.
There was a very pronounced shoe print. And what stood out about the shoe print the most is that it was in blood.
Detectives also take note of the shocking number of times that Jana was stabbed.
Jana's autopsy revealed that she...
As far as the hospital goes, that was sort of a dead end. It never produced any kind of information either.
Jana had no enemies. You know, nobody ever expressed being angry with her, or she never had any trouble with anybody. We had no earthly idea of who could have done this.
We really focused mostly on her closest circle. The first people that we wanted to clear from Jana's murder were Jason, the roommate, and Jason, her fiance at the time.
The violent nature of the attack, the numerosity of the wounds, all hinted towards some sort of personal relationship that she may have had with somebody.
Joan Berry says her daughter met Jason White at a party when they were both students at East Tennessee State University, and the romance moved quickly.
We're very fond of Jason. She got engaged at Christmas, and she couldn't wait to show me her ring.
She wanted more than anything to be his wife and be a mom and raise a child with him and have them grow old together. She was so excited to marry him.
After graduation, Jason moves to Michigan to get his law degree, while Jonna moves to Knoxville to continue her studies.
He was in Michigan, and every night she would go to sleep with them talking. And then when she would go to sleep is when he would hang up.
In speaking with Jason White, he had explained to us that he talked to Jonna that night.
Detectives learned through his cell phone records that his cell phone appeared to be in Michigan the entire time.
No, there was no suspicions in my mind. I had never crossed my mind that Jason White ever did that.
Very quickly within the investigation, Jason White was cleared as a suspect.
Police are also interested in talking to the other Jason in Jonna's life, her roommate, Jason Amami.
So, how are you doing? I am doing good.
Police interview Jason the day after he gets out of the hospital, where he was treated for wounds to his chest, face, and hands.
Once Jonna's fiance was ruled out, all eyes went to her roommate. And one of the first questions investigators asked him was, do you have a romantic interest in Jonna?
As far as your relationship with Jonna, how long have you known her? I've known her for probably at least over 5 years. Okay. Did you guys ever date? No. Never? No. I was living in Knoxville and she needed a place to stay, so I said I'd be happy to let you live with me. That wouldn't be a problem.
Just got her fiance, but this is another guy. What did you make of the arrangement for her to move in with a guy as a roommate?
I was fine with that. I'd known Jason for a couple of years. He was a boyfriend of one of her good friends too, so. And even her fiance, Jason White, he didn't have a problem with it.
He tells Detective Delgado that on the night of the attack, he was watching TV when Jonna decides to go to bed.
She probably went to sleep about 10:30. I probably went to sleep 12:30 around there. What do you remember after that? I just remember waking up, hearing screams. I looked at my alarm clock. I believe I remember seeing a 4, so probably 4 a.m. sometime.
Jason says it's not the first time he's been awakened by Jonna screaming at night.
She sleeps very light. She told me when she first moved in, she said, if I wake up and I'm scared or something, just come in and check on me, make sure I'm okay.
At first he assumed that she could have just been having a nightmare, but as he got up and he was leaving his room to enter her bedroom, he noticed that there was a male figure.
Next thing I remember is I'm on my bed and he's on top of me. I just remember fighting with him. He punched me in my face. I kept telling him, I was like, what do you want? He just kept telling me, shut up, shut up. And then I felt a sharp pain right here, and that's when I knew he had a knife.
He grabbed the knife to try to get it away from the individual. He kicked the individual in the groin area. The individual went back against the bedroom wall. He saw an opening that he would be able to get out of the bedroom.
At that point, he didn't hear any more screams for Jonna. He wasn't sure if she had escaped the apartment or not. But at that point, he just ran out of the apartment as quickly as possible.
You ran out of the apartment. Did you take anything with you? I didn't even think about it. What were you wearing? I was wearing blue workout shorts, which I wore to the gym, and a pair of boxers. Okay. And that's all I was wearing. I just ran straight out the door and right across the street. And I was banging on some of the doors at the other complex.
Investigators zero in on an important point in Jason's story. He came face to face with his attacker, Jonna's killer.
Now, let's just go through what this guy looks like. He's got short hair, kind of like mine. It's like a brownish blonde color.
He felt confident that he would be able to identify the person, provide a sketch of what this individual looked like.
This is Tom. Tom, this is Jason. Hey, how's that? Tom's going to help you with the composite.
Using Jason's detailed description of that attacker, police are able to generate a photorealistic computer composite of their suspect. So he's able to give you some details about what this intruder looked like.
Yes, because he was face to face with that person. So he's really the only living survivor that can give us a description of the individual.
Despite Jason's cooperation, investigators say they still have lingering questions about Jana's roommate.
There was no forced entry, and I think that led investigators to probably focus a little bit more on Jason Amami.
Also, we had to look at the murder weapon came from within the apartment, within their own knife set. So, Jason had access to that. Could he have gotten the knife and used it to commit this crime? Could he have cut his own finger? It'd be pretty hard to stab yourself in the face close to your eye, but we couldn't rule that out.
Is Jason a victim or a suspect? Investigators take him back to the scene of the crime. Will his story hold up?
He just kept stabbing and stabbing. That's at the point to where I noticed he finally had a knife.
The walkthrough was really important for us. Look for inconsistencies regarding what he was telling us about the scene, what happened that night.
We had no choice.
But there's an unexpected guest at the funeral. Just 48 hours after he was released from the hospital, Jana's roommate, Jason Amami, attends the funeral. And so do detectives.
There was a lot of chatter about the fact that Jason had run from the scene and leaving Jana there, essentially to die.
People thought he had to have some kind of role in this because of his actions or inaction.
Did it trouble you that he ran away from the scene to get help instead of trying somehow to help her?
It did for a while, but now after you have time to process things and really think about it, I thought he was just trying to get out too, because he was attacked.
Detectives want an exact picture of what happened inside Jana and Jason's apartment. With his detailed play-by-play, Jason takes them as close as possible to being in that room when the attack happened.
Date is December 9th, 2004. Time is 15:59.
We had him look around to see if anything was missing, if anything had been stolen or disrupted.
There was an Atlanta Braves baseball cap that was found in Jana's bed. That was not there before, was not owned by Jana, was not owned by Jason Amami.
The partial shoe print on the cardboard, the Atlanta Braves hat, those things were leading us to believe that someone else possibly had entered the apartment.
In the sheriff's office video of the walkthrough, you can see that Jason's wounds from the attack are still fresh and visible. Still, he's able to calmly describe the evening's events in great detail.
I came home from the gym and the door was locked. Jana was sitting right here.
The walkthrough was really important for us to watch his body language, listen to him, look for inconsistencies regarding what he was telling us about the scene, what happened that night.
He tells police the same story he did in his interview the day of the murder. Jana went to sleep first, he went to bed around 12:30, and then was awakened around 4 a.m.
I heard a scream. I didn't say a word. My door was totally closed to my room. I woke up just from my sleep here, and I remember walking this way.
He says he opened his bedroom door, which was closed. He was confronted by someone.
And he is right there. And I'm still looking down, and I remember doing this and having him face me and grab me like this. And then he pushed me back this way, and I fell on the bed like this.
At first he was confused. He wasn't sure if he was being punched or being stabbed.
He just kept stabbing and stabbing. And that's at the point to where I noticed he finally had a knife. I remember trying to defend myself like this with my hands, and that's where I got the cuts on my hands.
And Jason described pushing them back towards the wall of the bedroom. That information was corroborated by blood smear on the drywall.
Jason says he no longer heard Jana screaming and didn't know if she had escaped the apartment or not.
I took off and I ran as fast as I could this way.
He said that when he left the apartment, he had to unlock the front door to get out.
And as I ran through here and got the door open, I just ran. I didn't even stop in here. I ran down through here and down these stairs.
So Jana's roommate goes running from this apartment complex What route did he take?
Jana's apartment is located over this way, so he ran out of the apartment complex. He saw a figure off in the distance. He thought it was the person that was still chasing him or looking for him.
Came this way and looked closer at it. And I saw a figure come from behind this little cabana here and kneel down in between one of these bushes here on the other side of the pool. And it was kind of like somebody going like this. Walking like this.
After knocking on doors at a neighboring apartment complex but not getting any help, Jason takes off down the road.
I think the biggest information that we got from the walkthrough was he felt like he was being pursued, and you kind of started to understand how and why he made it all the way to the 24-hour convenience store before he could summon help.
I bolted down to the street. And I got behind the car and started yelling at the door. They didn't even stop. So I remember going just right next to these bushes here. I remember scaling right about this point right here. And then when I got to the door here, I looked inside, noticed the clerk. I got to here, told him to get help.
After that minute-by-minute account that was consistent with his earlier statements, detectives are now less convinced that Jason could be the killer. But is he telling the full truth?
When Jason was confronted by the polygrapher, he became very upset.
Turn your chair around, let's talk. Yeah. Your scores were substantial, Faith. Where am I wrong then? I have told you the 100% truth.
And new physical evidence leads to more questions than answers.
There was Jana's DNA, Jason Amomey's DNA, and there was an unknown DNA that was collected.
They realized there's a third party that was in that room.
And a twist so wild, not even seasoned investigators could see it coming.
I felt very confident. This has to be our guy.
Why would anybody want to cop to a crime they didn't commit?
A family still looking to track down a murderer tonight, nearly 3 years after their daughter in a UT co-ed is killed in her apartment.
What is that like for you as a family to have your daughter murdered and no one arrested for it?
That was the only thing on my mind from morning to night. That's all I could think about.
When it comes to this mother wanting to find answers, she would stop at nothing.
We need to know who did this to Jana. We need answers.
We would follow up with the tips that we would get.
Ruling out suspects.
All I'm trying to discover is the truth. And I'll give my point, Jason, that you haven't told it to me. I have told you the 100% truth.
And seeing what's left.
There was an unknown DNA that was collected from several locations inside and outside of the apartment.
Now that's got to be important because now that's going to be something that's going to lead you to somebody. You get the case of Jana Berry and you're running samples. Give me an idea of how that works.
There's no other person, literally no other person in the world, but you that could have left that sample.
You know what happened to this girl?
Here in Knoxville, we don't have a murder every day. When something like this happened to Jana Berry, it kind of shook up the neighborhood.
Brendan Park Apartments calls itself a peaceful retreat here in West Knoxville. But one early December morning, that peace was shattered. 21-year-old Jana Berry had been brutally stabbed in her own apartment.
In a million years, I would never have thought that this would have happened to my daughter.
21-year-old Jonna Berry and her roommate were stabbed in their Brendan Park apartment on December 6th. The roommate who survived was able to call police, but Jonna didn't make it, and her killer is still on the loose.
Based on the description that Jason gave us, we had a composite sketch made.
This is who sheriff's investigators are trying to identify. He's in his 20s, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, 150 pounds.
The thing about the composite, it had some really distinguishing features. Kind of almond-shaped eyes, widow's peak, kind of a blunted nose, but a white male.
If you think you have information that could help the case, you're asked to call the sheriff's office.
Leads were coming in, but leading nowhere. Meanwhile, Jonna's mom turns her grief into frustration. The weeks go by, no arrest. What is that like for you as a family to have your daughter murdered and no one arrested for it?
We called every day. We would call the detectives.
There was that feeling that detectives and the sheriff's office weren't doing enough, when in reality, they were working this every day. There just weren't any answers.
Jonna Berry's family is still upset over a lack of closure.
I can tell you that the 2 detectives assigned to the case were running nonstop, chasing down leads, going through tip lines. All of those things were happening, but the end result wasn't there.
It was very hard for me not to have an answer for Jonna's parents, and speaking with them on a daily basis, letting them know there's nothing new, there's no more leads.
I became so worried that it would become a cold case and we would never get answers. I kept it in the media. I did everything that I could.
You turned your grief into action.
I did. I did.
Yesterday, they were at the track in Bristol. Today, a church in downtown Knoxville.
She called me every time she was doing something different. Hey, we're going to put flyers at the cleaners. Can you come?
Joan used her own money to put billboards all over town, including a heavily traveled stretch of I-40.
We had several billboards with Jonna's pictures, with the picture of the composite on them, and $70,000 reward.
A local grocery store chain had information about seeking help to solve the unsolved murder on their delivery trucks.
We handed out flyers. Family and volunteers put flyers on cars in the neighborhoods around through there.
I don't think I could ever be as strong as Joan. She wouldn't stop. She digs in and she just goes.
That was the only thing on my mind every day, from morning to night. That's all I could think about was who would kill Jonna.
While the investigation has made little progress in naming a suspect, things are moving ahead on the forensics front.
Inside Jonna's apartment, there was a very pronounced shoe print in blood.
We ended up sending off the cardboard that the tread pattern was on, and we got information back from that this tread appeared to be this type shoe, Faded Glory. Most have sold at Walmart.
The shoe print ID is the most promising evidence so far, leading detectives to their strongest suspect.
We got a tip a few streets over from the apartment complex that an individual had been involved in some crimes, some thefts, and that led us to an individual named Michael Percival. He lived in a trailer park, probably within a few miles of the apartment complex. When we went into the trailer to talk to him, the carpet cleaner was sitting there next to the living room.
A carpet cleaner isn't necessarily suspicious in and of itself, but what if somebody was using it to clean up blood tracked in on the bottom of their shoe? Detectives ask Percival if they can look at his shoes.
Detective Delgado retrieved the shoes for Michael Percival, and she noticed the tread on those being similar to the tread that were found in the apartment in Jason Amomey's room. She kind of elbowed me and showed me the tread, and we were both kind of like, holy cow, these could really be, the shoes.
I saw Captain Hall, and he said, "We've got him." He still had the shoes, Kevin. He still had the shoes. Everything looked like it was lining up for us. Michael Percival was the individual responsible for Jana's death.
But does the shoe fit?
We can't believe what he's saying. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
And there are more questions for Jason Amami as his patience wears thin.
100%. I have anything to do with this. Calm down. I'm getting out of here. I ain't getting out of here. Calm down. I feel like a suspect.
Detectives Hall and Delgado have just gotten a big lead in Jana Berry's murder case. They're led to a 19-year-old named Michael Percival. His shoes appear to match that bloody shoe print left behind at the crime scene.
I felt very confident. This has to be our guy.
Both of us were kind of big-eyed.
It was just like, we've got it solved. We couldn't believe that he kept the shoes.
Investigators bring Percival in for an interview. And in a shocking admission, the teenager says he witnessed the murder.
When Michael first admitted to being at Jana's house, he explained that this was part of a drug deal gone wrong.
He said that he went there with a drug dealer to collect money from Jana and Jason for drugs that they had purchased. He said that he entered the apartment and this individual that he came with was stabbing Jana and Jason inside the apartment.
But as detectives keep questioning him, they say his story just isn't adding up.
There was nothing to indicate at all that Jason or Jana were involved in drugs, so it was very inconsistent with what we knew about the victims.
Jana was never involved in drugs. She was very straight-laced.
Investigators take a closer look at Percival's shoes that they believe might have been at the crime scene.
We sent those off for analysis, and the analysis came back.
It was not an exact match.
Those were not the shoes. This was another dead end.
Michael Percival was ultimately cleared.
Why would anybody want to cop to a crime they didn't commit?
We learned through the investigation that Michael Percival liked attention.
Now, back at square one, investigators are re-examining the case.
There's this one person detectives keep coming back to, and it's Jana's roommate, Jason Amami.
While evidence such as the CDs, a baseball cap, and that bloody shoe print suggest a third person might have been in the apartment, detectives still have questions for Jason.
We wanted to 100% make sure that Jason wasn't involved in this in any way. Even if there was another person involved, that he didn't let them in.
So police ask him to take a polygraph test. He agrees, and the test is videotaped.
Are you ready to take this test? Sure. All right. If you would, let me take off my sweatshirt. Yeah, if you would.
One of the main reasons that we asked Jason to take a polygraph is just simply to see how cooperative he would be with it.
Do you know for sure who caused the death of Jana Berry? No. Did you have prior knowledge that the person who stabbed Johnny would be at your apartment that night? No.
But then things take a sudden turn in the interview room when the polygrapher begins to interrogate Jason.
Jason, I want you to listen to me. Yeah. You know, I think you're a smart boy, but you did a part on that test. Did I really? You really did. Turn your chair around. Let's talk. Yeah. Why do you think you failed the test? I don't know. I was 100% truthful.
The polygrapher basically started interviewing Jason Amami and accusing him of being the killer.
But I've been doing this for a long time, and there's something that you have not told me. Did you stab that girl? No, I did not stab her at all. Did you get just angry, perhaps, over something that she said or something that happened there? Never. And you just lashed out? Never. All I'm trying to determine is the truth. And my point is, Jason, that you haven't told it to me. Where am I lying then? I have told you the 100% truth.
It was the first time we really saw Jason react emotionally, in the sense you could tell he was very angered and offended by the question.
Are you saying I did it? I'm saying it certainly looks like it.
It was confrontational. The polygrapher was not just asking questions, but was essentially involved in a heated interrogation.
100%. I don't have anything to do with this. I don't care what that box says. I voluntarily took this. If I had something to hide, why would I take this test? Why would I do DNA? Why would I do this? Calm down. I'm getting mad here. I ain't getting out to do that. Calm down. I feel like a suspect now. Calm down.
He's very, very upset. It took a little bit to get him calmed down.
Police are reviewing Jason's test results when they discover there's an error.
The polygrapher said that he failed the test. When we had 2 other polygraphers look at the results, they basically said that he passed the test.
Besides passing the polygraph, detectives also aren't able to link that bloody shoe print or partial fingerprint on the knife to Jason, so he's ultimately cleared.
Jason was originally from Colorado, and shortly after, he relocated back to Colorado.
Michael and I traveled to Colorado and visited with him. He answered our questions and had time for us, and I'm sure this has affected Jason's life too.
Jason has not only suffered the trauma of the attack, but he's also facing public scrutiny and innuendo.
Jason was a good kid who got caught up in this and the circumstances of it and made a decision of flight that was involuntary and took a lot of heat and a lot of flack for that, and has.
Weeks after the murder, a new bombshell development when lab results come back from blood at the crime scene.
There was Jana's DNA, Jason Amamy's DNA, and there was an unknown DNA inside and outside of the apartment.
Could this DNA belong to the killer? Detectives are racing to find out.
That was the key to getting the person that did this.
Wow, they're going to be able to find who murdered her.
I see memories of Jana everywhere in the house, right?
Yes. These are Jana's little baby shoes.
They rest here?
That's where they stay here all the time, yeah.
Even though years have gone by since their daughter's murder,
this is my pride and joy. I love this.
In nearly every corner of every room, mementos of Jana.
This is Jana's room. We call it Jana's room.
Jana's room.
Still. And I still have her wedding gown.
You still
have her wedding gown.
All these years
after
later.
20 years.
This is it. That's beautiful.
This is the dress, her wedding gown.
All the beading. Oh, look at the train. Oh.
She looked beautiful in it. Yeah, it's 20 years old. She had picked out a wedding band for Jason, and we bought it. So Jana's dad wears the wedding band. He wears it every day.
Well, still got it. She worked so hard and did so many things. That was a small gesture.
I'm glad that she got to experience being engaged and planning a wedding.
Weeks after Jana's murder, investigators still don't have a suspect. But then a break in the case. DNA results have just come in.
There were 3 DNA samples found at the scene: Jana's, Jason, and an unknown male perpetrator.
The unknown sample, it was found in Jana's bedroom. It was also found in the living room, and it was found on the back door and outside on the back deck. And we know that they exited out the rear of the apartment because the unknown DNA is not only on the back door, but it leads down the back stairwell. We found no unknown DNA on the front door or leading out the front door.
Detectives also make a key discovery on the murder weapon.
There was an unknown DNA that was found on the knife.
The race is now on to find out who the DNA belongs to.
We thought they're going to be able to find who murdered her.
But after running that unknown DNA through a law enforcement database, investigators get some disappointing news.
The DNA comes back to us. There's no one in the system that comes back to.
They don't know who it belongs to.
It seemed unusual to us that a person would commit a crime with such violence if they didn't have some sort of other violent history.
They ran the DNA and no match.
No match.
While meeting with investigators, Joan learned something else that shocks her.
Tennessee doesn't take DNA if you're arrested for a violent crime, only if you're convicted. I was absolutely shocked, and I even said, wow, well, that needs to be changed.
And that's exactly what Joan does. For more than 2 years, hoping it might lead to her daughter's killer, she pushes for a new DNA law.
I would go to the Capitol and introduce myself and ask them if they would support the DNA law.
We're talking about any violent crime such as murder, rape, even robbery. Those people arrested would have to submit their DNA.
Joan is a fighter, and she rose up like a phoenix.
Jonna Berry was her name, and her parents, Joan is sitting in the back of the chamber here with me today, have been on a crusade.
Well, a victory today for family and friends of murdered UT student Jonna Berry.
I think this is a very important bill for every citizen in the state of Tennessee.
You pushed and pushed, and you got this law passed in Tennessee. You changed the law.
Yes, we did.
Jonna's law.
It is. It's called the Jonna Berry Act.
But ironically, even after changing the law, Joan discovers there's still no match with that unknown DNA in her daughter's case. How did you find the strength to keep pushing?
And this was the most important thing in the world to me, to find out who murdered Jonna.
When it comes to this mother wanting to find answers, she would stop at nothing.
To keep her daughter Jonna's name out in the public, Joan goes on national talk shows.
Joan, what has it been like all these years?
There's no words to explain what we've gone through.
She even goes on the Montel Williams show seeking a psychic's help.
Really need to know, we need to know who did this to Jonna. We need answers.
Heartbroken warrior. That's who Joan is.
That was my prayer always, to have an answer. And I believed in my heart that God would answer my prayers.
Even if it took a while?
Mm-hmm. And one day he said, "What are you worried about? It's gonna be okay."
As the investigation into Jonna's murder went on, it really expanded. Thousands of tips came in.
We would follow up with the tips that we would get. Every person that we came in contact with, we asked them to voluntarily commit to a DNA sample.
We looked into any person that we possibly could, but it was just dead end after dead end.
Then, about 2.5 years after Jonna Berry's death,
So in this lab, we actually have dual purpose.
a forensic scientist makes a key discovery.
I said, oh, wow, this might be something.
Our chief of detectives called and said that we all needed to get together. He needed to talk to us.
And he's like, get here as soon as you can.
A family still looking to track down a murderer tonight, nearly 3 years after their daughter in a UT co-ed is killed in her apartment.
The main thing that you're going on is DNA evidence.
Yes, we had the unknown DNA. It was really our only connection to the person that was connected to this crime.
We thought, will we ever have this case solved? Then the case makes a turn. Someone called in a tip after looking at the composite sketch, and they said, that looks like someone I know. And that someone is Taylor Olson.
Looks very similar.
Yes.
Taylor Lee Olson is 22 years old. He lived about 15 minutes from the crime scene, and he was known to have committed some petty crimes, also harassment, theft.
He also had an outstanding warrant for his arrest out of another jurisdiction. We arrested him, asked him about the crime.
Does he present in any way at all to you that he might have a connection to this?
He said that he didn't know anything about the crime. He voluntarily gave us his DNA,
Given that Taylor Olson only had smaller petty crimes, he didn't really fit the profile of who we were looking for.
We just thought, hey, you know, this is just another person that looks like the composite sketch.
Olson's DNA is then sent to a lab to compare it to the unknown DNA found at the crime scene.
It comes back, it is a match to the blood of that unknown person found at the crime scene.
So in this lab, we actually have dual
Jennifer
purpose.
Millsaps, the forensic scientist at the lab, made the match.
I looked at it a couple times. I wasn't too sure. I wanted to make sure that it actually was a match and I hadn't confused something. So we actually ran it twice to verify it.
That must have been a big moment.
Oh yeah, it was huge.
Amazing. Probably one of the happiest moments of my life.
We were all very excited, high-fiving each other, celebrating.
Gave Brad a big hug or something because we couldn't believe it finally happened.
You get a phone call. There's a match.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I said, I want to put you on the speakerphone because I wanted Mike to hear too, because I didn't trust what I was hearing. It was the blessing that God had answered my prayer.
So when we come back to town, we learn that Taylor Olson has a couple more outstanding warrants for his arrest, a burglary and a theft.
At that time, detectives don't have a warrant to arrest him for murder.
So we go into mode of looking for him and trying to locate him on those arrest warrants.
He was found, ironically, in the mall where Jonna worked, in the parking lot of the mall.
He was inside the trunk of a car. He was trying to hide from the officers. So we took him into custody.
You had your suspect.
We had a suspect. We wanted to give him an opportunity to explain why his DNA or his blood was found there in the crime scene.
What's up, Taylor? How you doing, man? Good.
It was very important to us that he didn't have any upfront knowledge that we were going to talk to him about Jonna or the DNA.
Do you know why you're here?
Pretty much.
What for?
Guys accused me of breaking into his house and stealing a bunch of steal.
Had you ever heard about the Jonna Berry homicide case before?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd never seen Jonna Berry before?
Like, in person?
Yeah.
No, I've never met her.
Detectives decide to confront Olson with the DNA evidence.
After I sent your sample off to the TBI lab, they got us a report back. It's a match for your DNA being in Jonna Berry's apartment.
Is this a joke?
No.
Like, I really don't know anything like it.
Trust me, it's not a joke. Is there any reason that you can explain your blood being in Jonna Berry's apartment?
My blood was in Jonna Berry's apartment.
Right.
You're serious?
Yeah.
He was very adamant that he was not there. He denied any involvement.
You think killed someone?
I'm just talking about the evidence, is what I'm talking about.
I've never killed anyone.
We knew he was there, of course, because of the blood, his DNA being there.
So we're here to give you an opportunity.
Okay.
To, tell us what happened, why you were there, and why your blood was there.
I have never been there. I don't even know killer. I haven't killed no one. I've never killed anybody. Never.
There was no doubt in my mind at that point that this was the person that we'd been looking for. We have your blood there.
So I'm pretty much huh?
We're giving you the opportunity to explain.
I don't have an explanation.
What happened?
Finally, we were just like, hey, he's just going to keep going and going with his story, and nothing's ever going to change.
It almost seemed like he thought that he was going to get away with it.
Olson is questioned 3 days in a row. And on the final day, investigators are about to make a breakthrough.
I've been sitting out here in the hallway listening to this that you're talking about, and I'm just about sick of it. Why did you do this to this girl?
And finally he said, okay, I was there.
I can't believe this happened.
You got the knife away from that person? Went kind of crazy?
Have a seat now, Sherry. You want both free?
Yeah.
Okay.
is your opportunity to tell, because this is your last chance. Your last chance to get your voice out there. You tell your side of it. We already know her side.
On his third day of taped interrogation, Taylor Olson continues to deny any knowledge of Jonna Berry's murder.
Why don't you tell me what happened when you were inside?
I don't know.
He would just say, I don't have an explanation, don't have an explanation. So finally, you know, we just said, like, enough's enough.
Taylor, I've been sitting out here in the hallway listening to this you're talking about, and I'm just about sick of it. You know what happened to this girl. Look at this. You were there. You know what happened to her. We know you were there. The evidence shows you were there. Why did you do this to this girl? Huh? Why'd you do that?
And that's when you really saw Taylor change. Like, once he saw the crime scene photo, this is what happened, this is what you did. Like, you need to talk about this.
Finally, with evidence of the crime staring him right in the face, Taylor Olson begins sharing his own account of the night of the murder.
I just didn't understand what happened.
Did you
thought I got too
Did you have
drunk.
blood on you? Were you cut?
I don't remember if I was cut.
Eventually, more details begin trickling in as Olson says he was out that night with a friend named Noah Cox.
Me and Noah went out and jacked a CD player out of a car. And we kind of got lost from each other. And someone came out when we were breaking into cars and yelled at us. Ran off. I don't know where the hell he was.
Now, wandering around on his own, Olson says he suddenly found himself outside Jonna's apartment.
He says he goes up back steps of Jonna and Jason Amami's apartment.
I was looking for some keys. And then someone said, "Who are you?" or "What are you doing?" or something. And I was like, you know, chill out. And then I just heard like a yell, and then I just felt the pain.
He goes in Jonna's bedroom. Jonna wakes up. He says they get into a confrontation and she has a knife, stabs him on the arm, fought with her over the knife.
She did fight back hard. She fought for her life. That's why the stabbing kept going on and on.
You got the knife away from that person and just went kind of crazy?
Yeah. I guess they were sleeping with it. I just freaked out.
As for Jason Amami, Olson says he had no idea that another person was in the apartment.
I didn't even remember anything about the guy until the news said it was 2 people. I didn't realize everyone got hurt like that.
Did you just go in there and things just went wrong?
I really don't know her, man. I've never met her.
There's no reason for him to select that apartment other than the fact that it was the first apartment he came to that had an open door.
And Jonna, according to her mom, was a stickler for locking the door every night. Nobody knows why the door was unlocked on that night.
After nearly 3 years of unanswered questions, with investigators looking at people in Jonna's life and complete strangers alike, Olson's confession is startling. And to wind up having a random person, a break-in, nobody who's really connected to her, that's not common, is it?
No, not really. It wasn't. It was a surprise to us, and I think everybody else was kind of surprised too.
Now that Knox County detectives know Taylor Olson's full story, he prepares to tell his mom and sister the truth.
Would you rather talk to your mom on the telephone, or would you rather talk to her in person?
I'd like to see her.
She really is being a mom. You kind of have to feel for her. What's going on? What has my son done?
What happened, Tay? The truth. Taylor, I love you.
It was an accident.
Are you sure, Taylor? Taylor, I need to know. It's okay. I want to know the truth, okay?
I can tell you.
Okay. If you'd rather have an attorney, that's okay, too. Did they offer you one?
Yeah.
When did you tell him the truth? How did that come about?
I got my blood's on the knife, and my blood's like in
Then
the
why did
back
they
door.
let you go? Did they get the DNA back? Okay, and it matches? Taylor, okay. Listen, I'm going to help you. I want to make sure that this is for real and that you did it. No, I don't know.
And at that point, you feel their brokenness over this horrific crime.
Taylor, I want you to know something. I want you to start praying because there is a God. Do you hear
And
me?
he loves you and will forgive if this is true. I'm so sorry, Mom.
After coming clean to his family, Olson now faces the press.
Did you mean to kill her? Why'd you do it? Was it an accident? But you stabbed her 26 times.
And his look was one of complete surprise, shock, baffled.
He told reporters it was an accident.
How's that an accident? Accidents happen one time, not 20 plus. No, that angered me that it was an accident.
Well, after 33 months of wondering and waiting, Jonna Berry's parents finally came face to face with the man charged with killing their daughter.
22-year-old Taylor Olson, he's facing 7 counts, including first-degree murder.
But just as Taylor Olson is about to go on trial, he does something that utterly rocks everyone involved in the case. You finally are getting to court, and then you get shocking news.
Our top story tonight. This man, 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson of Knoxville, is behind bars. Now, today's announcement providing some relief to Jonna's family, who have spent years and countless hours searching for her killer.
What was that like for you to see him and to come face to face with him in court?
You look at that person and it's like, I know you're not supposed to hate anybody, but I hated him.
Cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom for today's hearing, but inside, 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson did not enter a plea when he was arraigned.
Olson faces a 7-count indictment, including 3 counts of felony murder and 1 count of first-degree murder.
They're planning for a trial, and then we get word Taylor Lee Olson is dead. He hanged himself in his jail cell.
I got a call the Monday after Easter that he had been found in his jail cell, that he had fashioned a ligature with sheets.
You finally are getting to court, and then you get shocking news. He's taken his life.
When I got the news, I became very upset. I even cried.
What were the tears for?
Just tears of relief, because we don't have to fight the system.
But Joan Berry wants confirmation with her own eyes that her daughter's killer is really gone.
I called the DA's office and I said, I know you probably think I'm just a crazy old woman, but I want to see him dead, just the way I had to look at my daughter, dead.
Joan and Mike wanted that. We met in the conference room in the district attorney's office and showed them photographs of Taylor Olson's autopsy.
To some people it might sound cruel, but I think it gave me some closure.
I think that the Berrys needed to see the photos of Taylor Olson because they were deprived of the right of a trial.
Though there's no trial, the case isn't exactly over, because in writings left behind in his jail cell, Taylor Olson tries to argue his innocence from beyond the grave.
I read a bunch of letters that said, I didn't do it, and hung himself. That's a coward's admission of guilt.
Olson writes a long note called The Story, where he tries to shift blame by bringing back a familiar name.
Taylor Olson said he didn't do it and that Noah Cox, his friend, is the one who committed the crime.
Noah Cox was the individual that Taylor said he was with when they were breaking into vehicles and were separated.
In an audio recording with investigators, Noah Cox denies breaking into cars with Olson that night, and he's adamant that he was never in Jonna Berry's apartment.
Mr. Cox, were you present in the apartment when Jonna Berry was murdered?
No, sir. The whole story just really doesn't make sense.
We had talked to Noah Cox. He had submitted to a DNA sample. His DNA didn't come back as a match to the unknown sample.
There was no evidence showing that Noah Cox was ever in that apartment.
There's no other blood samples, fingerprints, nothing to indicate that anyone but Taylor was there.
Taylor Olson's partial fingerprint was ultimately found on the murder weapon. Was there any part of you that felt any sadness for the outcome?
Sad for his family. Two families' lives have been ruined, you know, painfully. I'll never see my daughter again. Now they'll never see their son again.
Through their pain, Joan and Mike Berry stay busy, focusing on the laws they've changed and all the victims they've helped. And now here we are at the TBI, where there is big change.
There is change.
There's now a memorial to Jonna at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's Knoxville DNA lab.
Long after we're gone, she'll still be helping others.
To be able to have made that kind of change in a state law, that must be gratifying, even in the midst of your heartbreak.
It is very gratifying, but it's also sad that this had to happen to my daughter.
And when Joan and Mike aren't tirelessly fighting for victims' rights,
every senator vote on the bill. Every senator vote has every senator voted.
You do remember that one?
August the 26th or 21st birthday.
they take time to savor the bright, wonderful memories their daughter left behind, including a note written to each of them on her high school graduation day.
I still have the letter, so I'd like to read it to you, and it says, "Dear Mom, I want to thank you for being my mom. You have always been the one I could turn to, no matter what. The only true friend that I've ever had. I only hope that someday that I'll be a mom as good as you are. I hope that I have made you proud, and I hope I will continue to make you proud in the future. I love you, your daughter, Jonna."
I love you guys.
She loved life. You know, I can still see her in her little red convertible with the top down and her ponytail blowing in the wind.
Jonna, smile to the camera, girl.
Hey. Jonna's dead, but she's not dead in my heart. I plant flowers in her memory. Sometimes I'm outside, I think butterflies remind me of her.
So she's still with you?
She is.
Such emotional words from a mother, David. After her daughter's murder, Joan Berry actually started a support group to help families and victims of violent crime.
And Deborah, as you know, she also continues to advocate for DNA arrest laws. Today, 34 states require that DNA is collected after an arrest. That's our program for tonight. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.